can't begin without you, sir. You came all the way from Atlanta, Georgia. Sorry, I can't. I'm so flattered to travel all the way from Atlanta, Georgia, just to hear me. Okay. So I'm going to retell I'm now going to retell a story that I don't want to share, but I feel it's important to share. And that is that there was a man that asked his wife. He said, "How do you deal with my mood swings? How do you always stay so calm, even though I have all these outbursts of anger, and I could really fly off the handle? And yet, it doesn't really affect you." So she said, "What I do is, every time you get angry, I go to the bathroom and I clean the toilet." He said, "That's so interesting." He said, "That helps?" She says, "Yes, I use your toothbrush." Relationships have consequences. Now, relationships, let's be very candid here and very honest, okay? Relationship means that there's going to be a physical, emotional, and spiritual expenditure. And if the relationship is successful, it enriches and fulfills your life. But if the relationship is not successful, it depletes, drains you, enervates you, and destroys a big part of you. And therefore, I think it's very, very important for us together to study the tools behind what makes a relationship successful. What are the keys to a happy relationship, and what makes or breaks a relationship? So there are many dating websites that I'm sure some of you have visited. You don't have to raise your hands. I'm not going to ask you. I'm not going to shame you. But I don't know if it's like Cupid.com or Love.com. I'm not going to even mention the websites because I'm not interested in advertising. Nobody paid me to market anybody's website. And therefore, I'm not giving anybody free advertisement here. So I'm not going to mention the websites. By the way, if you want to know whether you should invest in these websites and start memberships, you can speak to me privately and you'll know my personal view on them. Anybody want to know? No, I'm not going to tell you. So these websites, they go ahead and they do extensive research. And what they do is they use algorithms and meta-analysis to look for compatibility, similarity, and one more thing, commonality. The algorithms and the meta-analysis are there in order to take two human beings and show how either similar, compatible, or common they are and bring them together. There's one flaw in this. There's one great error in the multi-millions of dollars invested in these algorithms and meta-analysis of these websites. And I'll tell you what the flaw is. What are they looking for? They're looking for things that show that we're alike. That you and your potential spouse are alike. So what does it mean to be alike? Think about it. We are both, it means you and the person that you're looking for, the prospective guy or gal that you're looking for. So we are both blank, blank, blank. You ready? We are both loud, or we are both quiet. We are both stingy, or we are both generous. We are both pleasant, or we are both pests. Okay? I don't know if anybody would acknowledge or agree or admit to the fact that they're a pest. Okay? But the basic thing is that we are both something. So we're both similar, we're both compatible because we have similar types of something. That's A. And B is we both like fill in the blank. We both like opera. We both like baseball. We both like sushi. You can't be Jewish and not like sushi, okay? So that's not even a question to ask. Everybody likes sushi today. Everyone likes sushi. Okay. We both like barbecues. We both like the cinema. We both like studying. We both like chilling. Whatever it is, we both like. The assumption is that if you are alike with someone else, then there's more compatibility and you're going to have a good relationship. You know what? There was research conducted, 23,000 couples. And the research showed, with these 23,000 couples, that similarity accounted for the success in a relationship. You know what the percentage was? 0.5%. Less than 1%. The fact that the couple had similar likes or interests was less than 1% that relationship would be successful. What are you talking about, right? You think I'm crazy? It's not me. This is secular research. Why is that? What's it about? So there's a famous researcher, famous professor, and he did his research in the University of Washington. And his name is John Gottman. You may have read about him or read his books. He and his wife do research together. And they actually have a laboratory in the University of Washington. And it's a very interesting laboratory. It's called the Love Laboratory. Imagine what they do is they shrink people and they put the people on a petri dish and then they take microscopes and look at the people. No, they don't do that. When you think about a laboratory, a love laboratory means that they get contestants or they get candidates to come into the laboratory and they watch them. Now, there's nothing really intrusive or it's not like voyeurism, God forbid, where they're spying on people or that they're looking at things that are inappropriate, indecent, or obscene. They're not doing anything like that. What they're doing is they're watching the couples, how they interact, how they interrelate, how they get along. And based on this research, Dr. Gottman, who, by the way, you'll never believe what his middle name is. His middle name is Fingerer. No, just kidding. That's mine. No. His name is John Gottman, but he has a middle name. It's John Mordechai Gottman. And he uses his middle name very proudly. He's a very proud Jew. Everybody's Jewish, right? Somehow everyone's Jewish, I don't know. But John Mordechai Gottman is one of the most preeminent and prestigious researchers on relationships and on marriages that last. And he has a statistic that he could predict. Imagine this, 94% prediction rate if your marriage will last. That's pretty good. Because a lot of people go into businesses, right? Whatever enterprise it is, you want to be an entrepreneur, and you have you're very industrious and you're very creative and innovative, you want to start a business. So somebody comes over to you and somebody says, let's start a business together. And you're wary and apprehensive. You're not paranoid. Well, maybe somebody in the room is a little paranoid, which is not healthy. So you're suspicious a little. So you say how do I know you? I'm going to do a business with you, a business venture. I'm investing my money with you. I have to certify you. I have to know if you're credentialed. I have to know, what you're all about. And you do research, and you're frightened, but maybe eventually you'll go into business with a person. Maybe. Marriage is far more important than a business. If a business fails, usually people are not getting cancer from it or committing suicide. What happens when a business fails? When a marriage fails, it affects people psychosomatically, psycho meaning the mind and somatic meaning the body. It actually causes people illness, where people get sick. And people feel like their lives are ruined, are destroyed. And yet, there are people that will get married to other people that they would never do business deal with, and yet they're marrying the person. And if I told you that the business deal that you're going into has a 50% chance of failure, by raise of hands, who would go into the business that if I told you the business has a 50% chance of failure? Who would go into it? You would really go into it? 50% chance of failure? Okay, all right, listen, okay, some people are very, like risk. Other people are more conservative. Okay, listen, I personally would not go into a business where they told me there's a 50% chance of failure. Marriages today, astronomical rise in divorce in today's society, in today's culture. More than 50% of marriages in secular world, in Western hemisphere, in Western culture, will end up in divorce. So why would anybody want to get married today? Now you're thinking, I came to hear a rabbi dissuade me from getting married? What kind of rabbi is this? What's he? Doesn't make sense. I'm not here to dissuade you or discourage you from getting married. Chas v'shalom, God forbid. What I'm here is to tell you that there is a formula for marriage and relationships that work better than anything else. Because Baruch Hashem, a million times, the divorce rate in the religious community is nothing near what it is in the secular community. Unfortunately, it's rising because, unfortunately, there's always a pattern that the religious people end up following the secular prototype, and they emulate that for whatever the reason, because there's always that inroad and incursion into the religious values that comes from the secular world. As much as the religious people try to make themselves insular and protect themselves, it doesn't always work. But Baruch Hashem, the divorce rate in the Jewish community, I'm not saying it plummets, but it's far, far less in the religious community. And in the Jewish community, marriage and the family has always been the bedrock of civilization. The reason for our success, the reason why we perpetuate Judaism for thousands upon thousands of years, probably like no other people, and we're able to preserve it, is because it's centered around the family. Family values, family morals, the strength and vitality and the endurance and the longevity and sustainability of the family. There's nothing more important than the family. And that's why when the Jewish people were getting out of Egypt, the Rabbeinu Bachaya says this, and Maharal says this, that the first thing that they were instructed to do was lemishpachosechem, to concentrate and focus on the family. Because it is the family that is our future. Without family, we are gone. So Jewish people have always put the greatest emphasis on building relationships, on making marriages work, and on having wholesome, healthy, happy models of family. So John Gottman says that he got it all figured out. He could predict. You come to him, you want to marry somebody, and I think it's very, as we say in Hebrew, kedai. It's very, very something that makes a lot of sense. Why would you want to get into a relationship if 50% of marriages in Western, now if you're very religious and you say that I'm only going to abide by a Torah type of marriage, by a Jewish type of marriage, okay, then you're setting yourself up for success. But if you're not, you're setting yourself up basically for failure. One out of two, well, the chances we said are even more than that it's going to fail. And if it fails, it's not just like you lost some money. You lost a part of you. We said that an unfulfilling relationship or a disastrous relationship is draining, depleting, enervating, and disastrous, destructive. It destroys a part of you that will never ever heal, that will never ever, even if you find somebody else, there's a part of you that is probably irreparable, that almost can't be repaired. So let's understand Dr. Gottman. And I think this is very, very critical information. This is critical information. I know that you didn't pay admission to come here, but this really should be $1 million admission fee. Because this is information that could spare you agony, frustration, illness, and could hopefully help you. I'm not giving any guarantees. I'm not the type, God forbid, that gives any guarantees. But I'm telling you that I've done a lot of research. And Baruch Hashem, I've had the experience as a Rav to counsel a lot of people. And I'm giving you advice from the heart, but also not only from the heart, but that's based on empirical, authentic research of how you could have a better relationship and how you could, Bez Hashem, with the help of Hashem, find somebody that you can marry and have a wonderful, healthy relationship. So what did John Gottman find, Dr. Gottman? How did he get this 94% litmus test? You know what he saw? He said couples that know how to relate to one another, that communicate pleasantly, nicely, those are the people that will stay married. As simple as that. What's going on here? Yeah, as simple as that. Basically, what he was saying is that it depends on how they relate to one another, what kind of emotions they show. So in Hebrew, we have something called midot tovot, midos tovos, which is roughly translated as good character traits. But what does it really mean? That's not what it means. You know what a midot means? Midot, the etymology, the shorish, the root of midot is midah. You know what midah means? Midah means a measurement. It's like you're measuring the flour in order to bake cake. You take a spoon of sugar, and 3/4 of a spoon of oil. That's what midah means. So what does it have to do with your character traits, measurements? And the answer is that every one of us has a certain measurement of certain emotions. And it's how we express those emotions that allow us to interact and interrelate with others. And this is precisely what will make or break our relationships. What kind of midot, what kind of measurements, how we express our emotions that will guarantee whether we will be successful as spouses or very unsuccessful as spouses. So for example, a person who's prone to anger is not somebody who will make a good spouse. A person who's arrogant and bombastic, self-centered, narcissistic will not make a good spouse. I'm not saying that this person should be totally discounted. If the person has a way to work on himself or herself, by the way, we're equal opportunity discriminators and offenders, okay? Not, because everybody conjures up, I'm talking about somebody that's prone to anger, you're thinking about the guys instead of thinking about the girls. I met girls that are ballistic, not here of course, I've never seen a woman here that's it. I'm saying, but I've met girls that have, I don't know if they have too much Y chromosome in them, or like what's going on with them. I'm not gonna, but like I met girls that really like, they could get enraged, like you ever see that green monster that, oh yeah. I met girls that like, stay far away, get out of here. Like, what happened to you, Self-centered? Do you think only guys could be self-centered? There are girls that I see when we serve sushi that hog the whole sushi platter. And the sushi platter is like 55-inch platter, and like you see this girl taking her chopsticks and eating the whole platter. That's self-centered. Never here. I'm talking about when I go elsewhere, okay? I'm saying, now there are guys that are so selfish that they cannot think about anybody else. They'll pretend because they want some romance, so they'll pretend, and they'll act with chivalry, and they'll open the door for the girl, but it's all a show, it's all a facade. Because when it comes to the real relationship, they'll slam the door on the girl and make sure her finger's not getting stuck in the door. You know what I'm saying? Well, it's terrible. There are guys that are very, very self-centered. And all they think about is themselves, their needs, their impulses, their instincts, their wants, and how they could get gratification, how they could get fulfillment, how they could get their needs met. They don't know how to accommodate others. And it's very, very dangerous, very scary. So these are things that you have to stay very, very far away from. Any type of temperament, any type of emotion that's on an extreme is no good. If you have somebody who's overly generous, and they say, wow, I'm on a date with that guy, and every homeless guy we pass, he just gives like a $100 bill to. Something's a little weird there. Now, listen. If he's a billionaire. By the way, how do you end up dating a billionaire, girls? It's pretty good. If he's a billionaire, okay, maybe that's. But if he's not a billionaire and he's dropping $100 bills to everybody, so either he's trying to overly impress you, or he has this need. It's almost like a flamboyant type of. There's something unsettling about him that he has. If he's too altruistic, too overly philanthropic. There was a guy who was a Renaissance history professor. I forgot if it was not in Wharton. It was either in Penn State or UPenn. I forgot which one. Somewhere in Pennsylvania there. And one of the I think it was Ivy League. So maybe it had been Penn State. And he was so generous and so philanthropic that he went ahead and he donated one of his kidneys, which is an amazing thing. It's a very, very special thing to do, to donate a kidney. And then he went ahead, he had a meeting with his wife. After he recuperated and healed from donating the kidney, he says, I saved a life. He says to his wife, I'd like to save another life. She says, wow, that's so noble of you. She says, how do you plan on saving another life? You're going to go find somebody drowning and get them? Or are you going to go to a rehab where someone's shooting up with heroin or something and stop it? He says, no. He says, now I have a second kidney. And she looks at him and she says, you know better, you're a professor. He says, but it's so, and he was married to a shrink. His wife was a psychiatrist. So she totally certified him as being insane and had him committed to an insane asylum, But that's not good either, to be overly generous. So no extremes are good. They're actually, it's very, very dangerous. So The bottom line is that John Gottman, he has a certain formula. And it's not based on similarities. It's not based on what you have in common that makes for compatibility. It's based on the emotions. It's based on how they talk to one another, how they communicate with one another, how they treat another. Is there mutual respect? That's what makes for a relationship. Now, I'm going to tell you something that is very controversial, and it may make you fall off your seat and get a little upset at me, but I'm not saying it. It's a famous researcher. His name is Daniel Weil. He said it. And he said that choosing a spouse, you ready for this? Okay? Choosing a spouse is choosing a set of problems. Oh, doesn't sound right. Imagine you go to a wedding, and you meet the Chatan and Kala, the Chassan and Kala, the bride and groom, and you go over and say, congratulations. But remember, choosing a spouse is choosing a set of problems. And look at you like, what are you doing? You're ruining my wedding day? But that's the truth. Choosing a spouse is choosing a set of problems. What does that mean? It's giving you a reality check. You see, no one is perfect. And if you think you're going to marry somebody who never annoys you, or who you'll never complain about, that is fallacious. It's false. It doesn't exist. Whoever you marry, there will be something you will find to complain about. There will be something that will annoy you. Because choosing a spouse is choosing a set of problems. God made it that we are marrying people that are different than us. Right? We marry, thank God, a different gender. Right? Male and female are from different planets. Men are from Mars and women are from... What's that? Bloomingdale's, huh? Men are from Mars and women are from, they say, from Venus. Okay, right? Men and women from different planets. Physiologically, we're different. We have different organs. Psychologically, emotionally, we're very, very different. And anybody who tries to equate men and women, it's a corruption. And they're doing a disservice to humanity because it doesn't exist. And unfortunately, liberalism and feminism, they paved the way for a lot of confusion. Tremendous amount of confusion for people. Men and women are very, very intrinsically, innately, ontologically, intuitively, inherently, we are different. There's a little boy is supposed to play with an action doll, and a little girl is supposed to play with a Barbie doll. If the little girl is playing with an action doll and the little boy is playing with a Barbie doll, it's not healthy, usually. There are always exceptions. But we are very, very, very different. And because we're different, God said, I don't want males marrying males. God said that is immoral. I don't want females marrying females. I want male to marry female even though they're different, because they're different. Because the female has something to contribute, a different dimension to contribute to the male, and the male has something to contribute, a different dimension to the female. And then they complement one another. C-O-M-P-L-E-M-E-N-T, not complement with an I, although it's important for spouses always to complement one another to make each other feel good. But they complement one another because each one gives something that the other one doesn't have. And that's why God said that the male has to marry the female. And another thing, God forbade us from brothers marrying sisters. Now that would be the easiest thing. You think about it. They're very much alike. They have the same background, the same nurture and the same nature, right? The same genetic code and the same nurture. They were brought up in the same house. I mean, think about it. Even if you love somebody, you want to marry that person. They come from totally, totally different backgrounds. Their mother and father are different than from your mother and father. And therefore, you think that, it's going to be easy street. There's so many things that subliminally, subconsciously, that we pick up from our parents that affect us later on in life. Even if you try to dichotomize and divorce yourself, like in a certain way from your parents and say, I'm a big person, I'm not only the child of my parents, I'm my own independent entity. That's not true. You're fooling yourself. For good or for bad, your parents are your greatest teachers. You could say you have a favorite teacher in this world. But I'm going to tell you something that will resonate with you one day if it doesn't resonate with you today. For good or for bad, your parents are your greatest teachers. And you pick up a lot from them. And when you marry somebody else from a different family, there's a lot of potential incompatibility. Because they have a certain type of mindset that they got from their parents, and you have a certain type of mindset that you get from your parents, and it doesn't always jive. It doesn't always meld and fuse together so easily. So therefore, the simplest thing would be that God should say, siblings should marry. Why didn't God allow that? Now we know that today, that's gross and it's gruesome and it's incest and it's a terrible avera. It's a violation. But it's only a violation because God said it is. Otherwise it would be permitted. And the reason why God forbade it is because God said, I want to struggle. I want two disparate and two distinguished, two very, very different entities to come together, to amalgamate, to fuse together. Where 1 plus 1 mathematically equals 2, but in marriage that's not what happens. 1 plus 1 defies marriage, and this is taught also by the Arizal and the Maharal, that 1 plus 1 does not equal 2 in a marriage. 1 plus 1 becomes 1. 1 plus 1 equals 1. How does that happen? You know how it happens? Because the 1 is able, this is very, very key, very critical, listen carefully. The 1 says to himself, I am now going to sacrifice. I am now going to compromise. I am not going to view myself as a whole being. I'm going to make myself into a half. And then the other one, the female says, I am not going to view myself as an independent entity. I am going to compromise. I'm going to sacrifice. I'm going to accommodate. I'm going to allow someone else in to my inner chamber, to my most intimate inner recesses, my most private parts. And I will now become half. So in a marriage, it's not 1 plus 1 equaling 2. It's 1 plus 1 equaling 1, because really that 1 becomes a half and the other one becomes a half, and then it becomes one whole. And anybody that thinks that they will maintain themselves as a 1 and get married and have a successful marriage, it will not work. It's not possible to work. So let's repeat what Daniel Weil said. Daniel Weil said that choosing a spouse is choosing a set of problems. There's going to be differences. And the question is how you intend on dealing with those differences. I want to share with you an amazing story. I don't know if I've ever shared it publicly. There was once a very, very wealthy Hasidic Jew living in Borough Park. And he had a beautiful home, and he was ready to paint the home, to refurbish the house a little, do some renovations. Part of that was painting. So he got a very qualified painter to do the job. The painter comes in, and the painter is an African American man. And the Hasidic Jew says to the African American man, he says, sit down, let's work on the contract together. And he says, I want you to know one thing. And he turns to the African American, the Hasidic Jew looks at him and says, I expect, or if he said it really as a Hasidic Jew, he said, I expect a perfect, right? He said, I expect a perfect job. And the African American said to him, what you say? You know? And he said, I expect a perfect job. And the African American said, look at the portrait that's behind you. Behind the Hasidic man in his house, in his dining room, was a portrait of a great, great, great leader of the Jewish people whose name was Rabbi Shlomo Halberstam, otherwise known as the Bavur Rebbe. The Bavur Rebbe was one of my heroes, my personal heroes. He was a man that went through the Holocaust. Some say that he actually dressed up like Lufthansa, like a Nazi, and he lost most of his family. If I'm not mistaken, like 99% of the family, the only ones that survived, his wife, his children, they were all killed. He and his son, Naftalichka, were the only ones that survived the Nazis. How did he do it? They say that he was rendered invisible. That's what they say. Now, whether it's true or not, they don't make up some stories about me or you, that we became invisible, right? So the fact that they even say such a story about him shows you his greatness and holiness. When he came to America, he could have been in shambles. The devastation, the calamity, the catastrophe that he witnessed, his entire world destroyed. His parents, his siblings, his wife, his kid, everyone was obliterated by the Nazis. They were turned into lampshades and bars of soap in the crematorium, in the gas chambers. And yet, he came here, and they said, we need a Babav, we need the dynasty to continue. They wanted him to be Rebbe. They tried to impress him, and he was so humble, he said, I'm not going to be Rebbe. I can't be Rebbe. But thank God they finally prevailed upon him, which is a sign of greatness when you say no. And he became the Bava Rebbe, and he rebuilt. You look at most of Borough Park, there's thousands upon thousands of Jews there, and most of them are his products. Imagine what he rebuilt. Amazing, amazing, amazing. So let's go back to the story. The Hasidic Jew was telling the painter, I want a perfect job. And the black man, the black painter, he says, you see that portrait there? He says, yes, because that's my Rebbe. He says, the black guy says back, he says, nah, that's my Rebbe. I said, what are you talking about? The Hasidic guy says, he says, what do you mean? It's my rabbi. I said, that's your rabbi? He says, you don't look like he's your rabbi. He says, listen, I'm telling you, he's my rabbi. He says, well, how do you explain that? He says, let me tell you a story. He says, when I was first starting out in my painting career, I got a really special job. I was called by the Bava Rebbe to paint his house. And when I came into his house, he didn't sit me down with a contract right away like you did. He offered me breakfast and sat me down and served me breakfast. The Bava Rebbe is a man that could have hated humanity. Look what humanity did to him, to his family. But he didn't. He was a man of God. He served me breakfast. And then he said to me, he says, you know, I want you to know one thing. I hope you'll do a good job, but I don't expect a perfect job. Because there is no such thing as perfection in this world. Since the temple in Jerusalem was destroyed, that was perfection. But ever since the temple was destroyed, there is no such thing as perfection. So all I expect is to try your best. That's all. Please try your best. The Hasidic guy was like stunned. And the black painter said to the Hasidic guy, he ain't your Rebbe. If he was your Rebbe, you wouldn't ask me for perfection. He's my Rebbe. There is no such thing as perfection in this world. Remember that. If you're looking for perfection, you will never find it. You should strive to be perfect in your relationships, but never look for perfection from the spouse, from the other person. Remember, choosing a spouse is choosing a set of problems. There will be something that will annoy you. You know, and Daniel Weil, the researcher, goes through this. He says, if you, let's say, you know, you're going with your spouse out for, you know, to a party, and you're all upset because she likes being loud at the party, and you're like more shy and timid. And like you just can't stand it. So then what's going to happen? You could be all upset about your relationship. So Daniel Weil says, no. He says, the fact is, you should be grateful that she even went to the party, because if you were married to someone else, she would be so late, right, as a lot of ladies are, going, you know, they have to put on their makeup, they have to do their hair and everything. And by the time they're ready, and the guy's waiting in the car the whole time and he's hunking away, by the time the girl's ready, the party's over. He goes through all these different illustrations to show that you think that your spouse is bad. He says, your spouse made it to the party. Someone else's spouse would never even make it to the party. He says, and someone else's spouse wouldn't even get dressed for the party and be late for the party because she's still harboring an insult a perceived insult that she thought you insulted her the day before, and therefore she's not even talking to you. And he goes on and giving all these different examples, okay? But he shows you that there's always issues, there's always problems. And if you could expect perfection in a relationship, or you could expect that perfect person, the way that, and this is brought down, the Chazal tell us this, the great rabbis tell us this, that the way God created people is that if somebody's very sweet and kind, they're not going to be overly aggressive. You can't expect to marry a girl, let's say talking to guys, okay? You can't expect to marry a girl who is a self-made millionaire and expect her also to be a very sweet and kind person. That's not, in the human mind, you have to understand, there's pathways in the brain and the neurons that are always developing. Right? If you want somebody who's super, super attractive, chances are that person will be, chances are, obviously a person can work on him or herself, but if a person is very, very attractive, chances are that person will be very materialistic and very vain. That's how it works usually. And that's why the Torah stresses, the Mefarshim say, that's why the Torah stresses, when it comes to the matriarchs, it stresses the fact that they were super beautiful. What's the Torah, a beauty pageant book? You know, it's almost like incongruous. It's almost like a huge discrepancy. The Torah is a book of spirituality, and yet it accentuates, and it tells you how beautiful the women of the Torah are. And what it's doing is it's telling you that although in the rest of the world, the more beautiful the woman is, the more crass or vain or materialistic or physical she is, In the Torah, it was the reverse. The more beautiful they were, the more spiritual they were, which is usually inconsistent. It's something that a person has to work on. So if you're looking for a guy, girls, you're looking for a guy, right? And you want that guy to be cutthroat in business and competitive. He may be like that in a relationship also. You can't be cutthroat and competitive and also be just totally oh, everything's okay. And nothing will get to you and nothing will affect you. It doesn't work like that. It's just, if you want somebody who's brilliant, right, then usually the person that's brilliant will be conceited and will be, in a sense, will become a little egotistical, and egomaniacal maybe. So you have to understand that the way Hashem made us is that we are compartmentalized. Our brains, we're compartmentalized. And if you have one feature, it may then diminish another feature. You can't have everything in one person. That's now how God created us. And if you're looking for everything in one person, you'll be very, very, very sad. So you have to understand that you have to make a list of what's important to you. And this is very, very concrete advice. Make a list of the things that are important to you, and make a list of things that you will not budge on. So what I call it in my practice is negotiables and non-negotiables. Okay, negotiables. So I'll give you an example of negotiables. An example of negotiables is that the guy has a preference for a taller girl, but that's a negotiable. If she wins him over in some other way, he'll take a shorter girl. That's negotiable. He's not steadfast on the fact that she has to, even if he's tall, so she's a little shorter, it's okay, it's negotiable. If everything else makes sense, we'll negotiate on that, okay? Girls, okay? I want a guy with a PhD. That's negotiable. If he doesn't have a PhD, he only has a master's degree, a bachelor's degree, but he has everything else, that's negotiable, okay? You want a guy who's funny. He doesn't have the best sense of humor, but that's negotiable. Because he has everything else, that's negotiable. You have to make your own list of negotiables, of things that you say, you know what, it's important to me. It's something that attracts me, but I'm willing to give up on it. And then you have your non-negotiables. What's a non-negotiable? You want to have children. The guy says, well, I'd rather have a dog. When I lived in Manhattan, my wife and I think we were the only ones that had children. Like everybody else had dogs, you know. We want to make if you want to make a play date for your kid, you know, it's like, it's woof woof, you know, something, you know, it's like something, you know. I tell you, you have to teach another language, you know. Something's wrong there, you know. Something's very, very wrong. Children, that's non-negotiable. If the guy says, well, I'm not interested, well, I'll have kids in 5 years. I want to first make money. That could be a non-negotiable, where you have to just totally, basically push if he's in the car, you push the eject. Well, usually he's driving the car. I don't know, you know. Well, you know, if you believe in equal rights, maybe the girl should drive the car and the girl should pay for the dates. Yeah, I think that's, you know, right? Maybe, but push the eject button and get him out of there because he's non-negotiable. That's non-negotiable. He just told you he doesn't want kids. It's finished with. Okay. And what's another non-negotiable? Religious values. Religious values are very, very important. Why are they so important? So I want to explain something to you. You could go on a date and you say, wow, we have so much in common. You go home to your mother and you say, Ma, I found the girl. And she says, really, why? Well, she's a vegan and I'm a vegan. Wow. Oh no, the girl goes home and says, Mom, I found the guy. How do you know? Well, we both want to save the dinosaurs from extinction. Oh, I'm sorry, that was already, you know, there's no more dinosaurs left. We both want to save the beavers from extinction, the opossums from extinction. We both love opossums, you know, it's a crazy thing, but we want to save them. We're both into climate control. That's not something that will keep you, because these are fads. This could be passé one day. This is something that, you know, you get into one day that doesn't keep a relationship. And if it's not something that will amount to much. What keeps a relationship, what's the glue that binds a relationship, is deep, abiding values. This research shows this, not me talking. You don't have to trust me. This is research. And I'm speaking because I care. I don't want to see a broken relationship. Deep, abiding values that you both cherish. We both want to build a home that's wholesome. We both want to build a home that's happy. We both want to build a home that's Jewish and that will have eternal values. We both want to build a Torah home. There's got to be something that's just not between you two, but something that's overarching. Something that is deeper than skin deep, that keeps the two of you together, then the relationship has a chance of lasting. That's very, very, very important to consider. So non-negotiable is, if he says, I don't believe in God, throw him out. You know, that's something. I mean, I'm not telling you, you have to have your own non-negotiable list. It's none of my business what you put down. If you want an agnostic and you think that's a negotiable, or, okay, God for chas v'shalom, I'm saying, but there are crazy things out there. A non-negotiable may be smoking. I don't want a guy that smokes. Or I don't want a girl that's done marijuana, maybe. That's non-negotiable. So if she's done marijuana, maybe it will affect, her fertility, who knows, right? I'm not saying that marijuana affects fertility. Right, maybe it will affect her memory, where she'll forget our anniversary. Sometimes marijuana does affect memory, okay? Okay, listen, there are couples that they want to go to hookah bars together and smoke up together. That makes them happy. Okay, I don't know if that's the best thing, but I don't think it's good at all. But anyhow, I'm just saying non-negotiable. He's an alcoholic. That's non-negotiable. Cross it out. There's not something you may know. Mentally stable is, okay, depending on the circumstance. If you're mentally unstable, don't look for a mentally stable person necessarily, okay? You have to be mentally stable to look for a mentally stable person. Assuming you're mentally stable, if the person is mentally unstable, that's a non-negotiable. That's not something you can negotiate on. So it means that if the person is mentally unstable, you have to cross it off the list. This is very, very important for you to do. And I think that it's very important to consult with somebody that's wiser than you, smarter than you, more intelligent than you, more seasoned than you, more expert than you. Aselach harav, make for yourself a mentor, a guide, a rav, a rabbi that could guide you, because you have what's called negius. Negius means that you are partial. You can't be impartial about yourself. You can't be objective. You are naturally subjective. Adam karov eitzel atzmo. A person cannot be objective about himself. It's a Gemara. The Talmud says that. Therefore, have somebody in your life, a guide, a mentor, have a rabbi that you turn to and say, what should be my negotiables? What should be my non-negotiables? Help me make this list. 5 negotiables, 5 non-negotiables. If you do this, I'm telling you, if you do this and consult with somebody wiser than you and smarter than you, and you realize that it's the deep abiding values that will be the glue for a relationship, you will probably mature much more and be ready for a relationship and get married. Because you're now prioritizing. You're doing something to maximize your success. And that's why I'll share with you a tremendous insight based on the Talmud. The Talmud says, make for yourself a mentor, a rav, and then it says, Knei lecha chaver, which literally means acquire for yourself, buy for yourself. A chaver means a friend. Now, when I saw this Mishnah, and I've seen it so many times, I have to tell you, I couldn't fathom what it means. I was so confused by it. I was so baffled. I was so bewildered. What does it mean? How could the Torah tell you to buy a friend? A friend is just like a transaction? It sounds like it's trivializing a relationship. It sounds like it's impugning the other person. It sounds like it's so insulting. This is my best friend, and I just paid him $1,000 to be my friend for the night. That's what friendship is all about? Come on. I want to tell you what the Mefarshim say, what the great Torah commentators say. And it is so profound, and it's so true. And it's so brilliant. You have to be willing, if you want to have a good friend, you have to be willing to invest into, Kaneh means acquire, means invest into the relationship. If you're not invested into the relationship, you will not have a good friendship. It doesn't mean to go ahead and pay off somebody, could you please be my friend for the day? There are people that need green cards, and they will could you be my spouse? I'll pay you this amount of money. We're not really married, but we're married. I actually met somebody recently, and she told me she's married. And then the next time I met her, she said she's not married. I said, I'm sorry about the divorce. She says, what do we really want married? I said, it sounds like a Bill de Blasio, New York City type of thing, like this new type of laws that have passed where you could choose your own gender on a birth certificate, all right? So now you could be married today, not tomorrow, but you really weren't married, but you are married. She said, no, we were just married for the green card. I said, okay, interesting, okay. Listen, everybody's got their own interesting preferences. I don't endorse or advocate these types of things. But Knei lecha chaver means you have to be willing to invest into a relationship. Not to buy the friend, but to invest in the friend. To learn how to accommodate a friend. And ultimately, the best friend you should have in this world is a spouse. A spouse is called Reim Ahuvim, which means beloved friends. The spouse is supposed to be your best friend in this world. You're supposed to have a relationship with your spouse that you have with no one else. It's the most intimate, cherished, exclusive, and special relationship ever in the world. And that's why, by the way, there's a big debate now about, let's say, should spouses share passwords? All right? If I have an email, or if I have a cell phone password, otherwise you're locked out of my cell phone, all right? Should spouses share the password, or should it be something that is restricted and private? Now, one second. It's not like a spouse is not like a regular. It's not 1 + 1 = 2. It's half and half equals 1. It means you're the same person. How can you have different passwords? Now, obviously, if a person had a breach of trust, or a person's relationship with a spouse that has an addiction, I'm not talking about those types of relationships. I'm talking about a normal, healthy relationship. Why are you afraid to give your password to your spouse? Now, the spouse shouldn't be, this like really curious. Remember, curiosity killed the cat, okay? Never forget that, okay? Where the spouse is like, I have to see what his mother told him, and I have to see exactly, that's not healthy either. That's not healthy either. But we're talking about a very, very special relationship where your spouse is your best friend. Now listen to one more point, and that is the Talmud in Tainus tells us, L'olam yehi adam, that a person should not be kasher ke'erez, stubborn or hard or obstinate, like a cedar tree. But L'olam yehi adam, a person should always be rach, soft, pliant, flexible, accommodating, like a reed, R-E-E-D. It means a reed goes with the wind. It's flexible. So here's an interpretation. One of my most favorite interpretations ever. You know what it means to knei l'chachaver? It doesn't mean to acquire a friend. The word knei, kuf nun hey, is the same letters as kaneh, which means a reed. It means if you want to have a friend in life, be like a reed, be like a kaneh. Be soft, be pliable, be flexible, be accommodating. Don't be stiff-necked. Don't be stubborn and obstinate, because you won't be successful. If you want to have a good marriage, you have to learn how to compromise, how to accommodate, how to allow somebody else into your world, into your life. That is so, so critical and so key. Now, how important is, by raising hands without comments please, because this could get a little out of hand, and this is not a TV talk show. I just ruined my notes, I spilled water all over it. I guess it's because my kids shouldn't see it, in case I leave it around the house. It's not really for them. How important is infatuation in a relationship? Raise your hands if you think infatuation is important. Come on, you guys are just like too pristine here and pure and yeah? Okay. So at least we have one person that's honest. Okay, just kidding. Okay. So by raising hands, how many people think infatuation is not important in a relationship? Raise your hands if you think it's not important. Okay. Okay, so we could send you to Amish land and no, just kidding. Nice place. Yeah, it's a wonderful place. Okay. Yeah. So there are no comments here. Yeah. So we'll afterwards. So infatuation, basically being head over heels, right? Where you see the person and it's love at first sight. Does that work? Is that good for a relationship? I'll never forget, I was involved in setting up a couple, and they both called me up and they said, it was the first date. They said, how did you know? I said, I wasn't sure, but I pretended. I said, of course I know, of course. I'm the rabbi, of course, I know everything, right? I have my crystal ball, and they were both totally infatuated. And I was a little concerned. They got married within a matter of, I don't know, a very, very short time. I think it was 2 days later. No, just not 2 days later. Whatever it was, But they're no longer married. They were just too. They were just too infatuated. It wasn't healthy. So infatuation is not necessarily the best thing. Why? Why is infatuation not the best thing? Now, you'll say, okay, of course, he's talking from a Jewish point of view. He's talking as a rabbi. And rabbis are supposed to discourage people from following their emotions or their passions or their impulses or their instincts, because it could be animalistic and it's not spiritual, it's not intellectual, right? That's the rabbi's job. It's not, no. There's nothing to do with the rabbi. This is actually research that was conducted. There's a guy, if I'm not mistaken, I think his name was Jonah Lehrer. Jonah Lehrer wrote amazing books on marriage and relationships, totally secular, nothing to do with Judaism, but very, very fascinating how he corroborates and basically sort of proves what Judaism has been saying for thousands of years. Very, very intriguing. I'm not surprised. Why is infatuation dangerous? So he shows that infatuation actually, what he calls a love relationship dissipates. It doesn't stay. Because it's only as real as the infatuation. So guess what he says? You'll never believe it. He says the relationships that stay are not the love relationships or the infatuation where a person gets like enraptured and the person's overly attracted and pumped up about the person and is jumping on a couch talking about the person, right? Think about it. How many Hollywood relationships actually last? Very few. Those are all infatuation, right? It's about attractiveness, right? Where the most attractive person is the person that you may be looking for, or the most exotic, the person that, wow, this person is, really exciting. It's a good conversation piece, but your spouse is not a conversation piece. Okay? Your spouse should not be a conversation piece. Your spouse is your spouse. It's not a conversation piece. So, the researchers say, and again, this is not from a Jewish angle, it's from a totally secular angle, that the best marriages, the marriages that stand the chance of lasting, are arranged marriages. You say, oh no, that sounds like Neanderthals, right? It sounds like, this ancient, antiquated way. It's like your babushka's going to go ahead and say, hi, I have a boy for you. You remember, she was from my town, this boy, and and from the same town, and his booby and my booby, and we're all, related to one another. Thank you so much, thank you. And all of us, you meet each other, and basically you have like a few, what they call it, sit-ins. You go to Babushka's kitchen, and she's making French toast or something, or she's cooking some chicken soup, and she says, you love her, Arranged marriages. Arranged marriages actually are the only marriages that statistically have the greatest success of working. Why? Why is that? So I'll tell you what research says. Because arranged marriages have a different expectation. The expectation when you go into arranged marriage is that I understand that I have to work on this, that it requires effort. It's not just based, I'm not saying that arranged marriages don't have to have chemistry, of course. Even if Babushka thinks about the guy for you or this girl for you, of course there's got to be some degree of chemistry. We have to be physically, it's important. Even the Torah this is the Torah view. The Torah says there has to be some kind of, where you're not, turned off by the person, God forbid. You find the person attractive, you find the person appealing, it's very important. But the arranged marriage is a type of marriage where it's not out of lust, it's not out of impulse, it's out of sense. It makes sense. The arranged marriage, you're taking two people that have a similar persuasion, similar background. Okay, even within the same background, people are very, very different. And your parents may be very different than that person's parents. But there's a intent, and the intent is that we are going to go ahead. We know it's going to be a struggle, and that's why the blessing that we give at a wedding is you should be zocher, means you should merit. What? To be bona, abayit neman, to build a faithful house. What do you mean to build a faithful? You're an architect, or you're in construction. What do you mean to build a? You're not a construction. What do you mean to build a house? It means that a house, a faithful marriage, constantly requires building. And if you think it's not going to require building, you're fooling yourself. And it's self-defeating. A good marriage means that the expectation has to be that love will grow. Love will develop even further. And that's why if you look in the Torah, the archetypical marriages, the prototype marriages, The foundation of us, our ancestors, our progenitors, our antecedents, who were they? The patriarchs and matriarchs, Avos and Amos, Avram and Sarah. What happens when Sarah dies? It says that Avraham was inconsolable. He was inconsolable. He was inconsolable. Did it ever say he loves her? It never mentioned once he loves her. Never said he loved her. And why was he so inconsolable? Why was he so grief-stricken? He loved her, obviously, but doesn't mention the word love. Let me give you another example. Isaac and Rebecca, Yitzchak and Rebecca and Rivka. It says he took her, he marries her, and then it says he loved her. It doesn't say he loved her first. The love develops and matures. True love is about closeness, devotion, warmth, and all that strengthens over time. True love strengthens over time. Lust diminishes over time. Infatuation diminishes over time, and therefore the relationship will implode. It's going to happen. It will break down. True love is strengthened over time. Another example, Jacob and Rachel, Yaakov and Rachel. It says he saw her and he loved her, but what does it say right after? So you'll say, oh, that's infatuation. Right? He saw her by the well. For some reason back then, they always met over the well. So I think it's a great way to meet somebody. Just go to the water reservoir, or go to the lake. Don't jump into the lake, but find your girl or find the guy by the lake. Okay, there's something mystical, something special about the well. And obviously, it was very symbolic and metaphorical about the well. But so you say, oh, Jacob, right? He destroys the whole theory because it says he saw her and he was overwhelmed, infatuated, because it says he loved her. But what does he do immediately after that? It says he cried. Why is he crying? It was a sobering realization. He was crying because he was so affected emotionally by understanding what she will contribute to his life and what kind of destiny they have together. So the love obviously wasn't a love of infatuation. It was a love that he realized that she is someone very, very special. And then he realized that they may not be buried together. How many people, when they're infatuated, can think about being buried? Right, till death do we part. Judaism doesn't believe till death do we part. At a secular marriage, they say till death do we part. Judaism believes that we're with each other forever and ever. In this life and in the afterlife. Judaism believes in the afterlife. We believe that we'll be with each other forever and ever. And that's what Yaakov was thinking. The only relationships where it says that they loved each other in the Bible and the Torah were very dysfunctional and deviant relationships that ended up in terrible, awful, dismal circumstances. You know who it was? Dinah and Shechem, where it says that she was basically raped by him. It says he loved her. And Tamar and Amnon, who were children. Amnon and Tamar were children of King David. And it says he loved her. And it was a rape. That's what it says about love. Because that was infatuation. Infatuation doesn't end well. I'm not saying that you won't be infatuated with somebody, because you're human and you may make mistakes. But remember, infatuation is not what you should be looking for. You should be looking for chemistry, attraction, yes, but that's not the priority. The priority are the deep abiding values. One last point before we conclude, and that is, I want to share with you something that I believe is very important, and there's a big misconception about this. And what I'm referring to is arguments in a relationship. Remember, if choosing a spouse is choosing a set of problems, it doesn't mean that that person is bad. It doesn't mean that person is flawed. It just means that that person is human, and you have to understand how to deal with the issues. Okay? So how many people think that when a couple argues, it's heading for potentially divorce, or that, just raise your hand, no comments. How many people think that when a couple argues, it's something bad and that they should go for a therapist and get help? How many people think it's good? Okay, so it's very, very interesting, because I want to tell you a story that happened. They say about the great Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, who was one of the greatest giants of Judaism, passed away, if I'm not mistaken, around in the early 1990s. But he was a legend, the most humble and kind, brilliant, great posek of Judaism, halakhic decider of Judaism. So when his wife died, he went to the funeral, and it's traditional at a funeral, when the dead person is there at the grave side, where you ask forgiveness. It's a little unfair because the person can't say no. But you have a quorum of 10 men, and you say, please forgive me, and what's the person going to say? No, the person's dead. If the person starts talking, we got problems, right? They say that Huckleberry Finn, I think that he staged his own funeral. He wanted to see what people are going to say about him when he's laying there in the coffin. because Gentiles, they have a wake, and you can actually see the body and everything. Judaism, we don't, really do that. So he wanted to see what people were going to say about him, what they really thought about him. So he pretended that he died, and they made the whole funeral. He's laying there, and they're eulogizing him, saying, "Oh, he was this, and he was that, and he was this, and he was that." And all of a sudden he pipes up and he says, "You forgot to say how humble I was." They say that there were different people that were, saying that, what would you want to happen, when you die? So one guy says, when I die, I want there to be I want my hearse to be a Jaguar, Another guy says, when I die, I want 1,000 people to come to the funeral. Somebody else says, when I die, I want to make sure that my inheritance only goes to my kids. And then the next guy said, when I die, I want people to say, look, he's moving! So anyhow, they say that, I don't know, how did we get into this? Okay. Anyhow, so when Shlomo Zalman, when his Rebbetzin passed away, his wife died, she was a very, very holy woman also, he said, listen, I know it's traditional to ask mechila, to ask forgiveness at a funeral, at the Levaya is the funeral, but he says, but I don't have to ask mechila, I don't have to ask forgiveness. He says, we were married over 50 years, and I never insulted her, I never said a bad word to her. So everybody's like, wow, you married over 50 years, and you don't have to ask forgiveness? I thought that was amazing. So it bothered me. I was like, is that a real relationship? How? Are they angels? Maybe they're not human beings. I mean, I'm a human being. I want to learn about real relationships. Now you know I'm a human being. I'm not an alien. I told you now. I want to know. I want to know the truth. So I met his daughter. And his daughter was actually married to the great Rabbi Yashiv, who passed away. I think he was like 105 years old, who was the next greatest rabbi of the generation. And I went to Rabbi Yashiv's house. I was very, very scared to go to his house because he was so holy. But I actually got into his house and I prayed with him, and I saw his daughter outside. I said, I want to ask you please a very, very impolite and personal question. She's probably thinking, like, what is he going to ask? I said, maybe a little intrusive, but I have to know. Did your parents ever fight? She's like, she wants to know, maybe I'm a psychologist, maybe, I said, listen, I just have to know because I heard the story. And she says, listen, she says, my parents argued like any normal couple, but they never fought. What a distinction there. Arguing is healthy. Fighting is bad. They argued, but they never fought. See, if a couple never argues, there's something wrong with the relationship. And this is not me talking. The research, John Gottman, look up his research, famous researcher, the biggest expert, I guess, on relationships and marriage probably in the world. And he says that when a couple doesn't argue, then there's somebody that's stifling, there's somebody that's being passive aggressive, there's someone that is not sharing information, and there's not really a healthy relationship there. Somebody's afraid to share, and somebody's not being honest, and therefore it's not going to last. So arguing is okay, but fighting is bad. So you have to meet someone. I'll never forget, my great mother. I always, revere my parents. Thank God they taught me a lot. Remember, your parents are your greatest teachers, for good or for bad. Thank God I'm blessed to have amazing parents. And they helped a lot of people. And God should bless them and should continue helping a lot of people. Amen. So I'll never forget that a couple came to them and they were fighting. And my mother said, and they were thinking, should they stay married? Not stay married. My mother said, you have to stay married. I said, but we argue so much. She says, but I love the way you argue. You know how to argue. That's healthy. That's good. So we learned a lot tonight. I'm going to ask you to please, I know none of you, I don't know if any of you took notes tonight, but hopefully mentally you took notes, and hopefully you are going to incorporate what we learned into your lives in searching for the right spouse. But there's so much information. But I want to conclude with this. And if you have to review, it's going to be online on Torah Anytime. And so you can always refer back to Torah Anytime to take notes. But I want to conclude with a story. There was a boy whose name was Herschel. Herschel was a young man, and he was ready to get married. And when Herschel was ready to get married, it was suggested to him an amazing girl whose father was a very wealthy man, and he was a budding scholar, Herschel. So he would get like this handsome dowry that he would be able to sit and study and prosper in his studying and flourish in his studying. And it was a great arrangement. So this happened, a few hundred years ago, this story. And he traveled to the girl's hometown because the wedding is usually in the girl's, hometown. He traveled there, and the girl's family, put him up in a house next door to their house. And it was the day before the wedding. And Herschel's getting ready for his wedding. He's shining his shoes. He's, adjusting his tie, making sure that everything is spick and span. And he looks out the window, and he sees, and he wasn't spying on it. He just happened to innocently look out the window. And he sees his fiancée, the girl that he's supposed to marry the next day. He sees that she's standing by her window, but she doesn't see him. And there's a huge bowl of dough, and the dough's rising, and all of a sudden, a bird comes. I think it was a chicken. And it starts pecking on the dough and ruining the dough. And he sees the following sight. She takes the bird, throws it, and smashes it, pummels it against the wall. And he is aghast. He's appalled. He says, "This is the girl I'm going to marry. Let's say if I misbehave, what's going to happen to me?" And he says, she's got a temper. She's angry. He says, that's not a good Jewish girl. That's not somebody I could build a life with. And he says, I have to get out. Remember, the most important criterion for a relationship is the attributes, the traits, the midos, the measurements of how a person perceives things and how a person behaves, and the emotions that the person shows. He says, I have to get out of this relationship. But if I cancel the shidduch, the arrangement, she'll be humiliated and ashamed. I can't do that to a nice Jewish girl. Well, no, she's not so nice. He says, what should I do? And he thought about it and he made a famous calculation. And Herschel said, instead of shaming her, better I be ashamed and let her keep her reputation. The next morning he went into the synagogue, he went into the shul, and while he noticed that people were watching, he pretended to steal money from the pushka, from the charity box. Very discreetly. It was all a facade and a ruse, and he pocketed the money. And somebody saw and somebody said, hey, that guy's a thief. And they said, the Yiddish expression is chaps him, which means grab him, get him, he's a thief, the thief. And they grabbed him, and he ran with the money. And then they attacked him, they threw him down to the floor, they tied him up. And they said, who is this guy? He's new to town. And they said, oh, you don't know who that guy is? He's the big wealthy guy, that's his new son-in-law, was supposed to get married today. And when the father-in-law found out, he said, the shidduch is canceled. And he says, yes! and he ran away. So, God never, ever forgets those that are saintly and those that give up for Him to keep someone's reputation intact and not to shame and humiliate someone. And therefore God blessed him. And he became one of the greatest rabbis, one of the most famous rabbis in the world. He was known as Rabbi Herschel of Krakow. Herschel Krakow, who wrote many, many svarim and was a great, great scholar. So I want to conclude with begging you from the bottom of my heart. I've seen too many broken relationships in my counseling career, so to speak, as a rabbi. I'm not interested in it. It's not good for anybody. Do your due diligence. Have the right priorities. Look for the right things. And Be'ez Hashem, with the help of Hashem, you should all be zocheh to find the right spouses, to build beautiful, beautiful Torah homes with. Amen. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for coming. Okay. So by the way, just to let you know, all men are invited Thursday nights here at 8:45. We have sushi, beer, and we have a Torah class, which is on always a different subject. Very interesting. And then for the girls, we have Thursday night in the King's Highway Center, BJX King's Highway, at 1601 Quentin Road. We have although every Thursday night, although this week I think the rabbi that teaches is going away, so he may not be there. So, but otherwise it's every single Thursday night at around 7:30ish. Class for girls, so everyone's welcome to enjoy. And for the guys, there's a regular program every Sunday morning, 9 o'clock. We pray, and then we have a continental breakfast and a class, and everybody's welcome to attend that as well.